Hello and welcome back to Refractions. I am your host, Stephen Mallon, and we are joined today by art consultant Rachel Peart. Excuse me. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here and to have some time to speak with you today.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. So I guess just if you can tell everybody what is your history with photography?
Of course. It's a little long-winded, but I think kind of colors the experience a little bit. So I think to start is that when I was in school and college, I started to try to do fine art studio work. And I think there comes a point, so I did a darkroom course, but I also tried sculpture and life drawing. I think there comes a point where you're looking around at all of your classmates' work and you realize I enjoy doing this, but I don't think this is my calling. And so that really led me down a path of art history instead, because I thought what an incredible thing to be able to just be able to look and study and reflect on art. I kind of couldn't believe that that was a degree that they would, give to such an enjoyable endeavor. And so after I finished school, I wanted some experience. And I'm originally from Kansas City. So there is the Kemper Museum in Kansas City, and it's mostly post-war. And they had an opening for an intern in the registrar's office. So I started working there, and it was my first exposure to some of Stieglitz's equivalents they had in the collection and Gary Winogrand's Women Are Beautiful portfolio. And that really piqued my interest. And then shortly after, I took a job at Heritage Auctions down in Dallas, Texas. And for those who are maybe not familiar, Heritage is based in and started in Dallas, and at the time was only in Dallas, Texas. Now they're worldwide. They're a huge billion-dollar company. But they were always based primarily in collectibles and then started to expand. So when I joined, they had an opening in the historical department. So I joined and I worked on Civil War sales. So I went to Gettysburg and Nashville. And so I had the chance to work on, daguerreotypes and ambrotypes. And I also worked on a Western sale. So we worked with ephemera and little CDVs and, all these kind of more historical photos. But then luckily, as they started to really invest and build out the fine art department, which when it first started was literally like a catch-all sale. So you'd have European paintings, a Mapplethorpe photograph, additioned prints and a Remington bronze, like all in one sale. And then they really started to branch out and they brought on Lorraine Davis, who's a photo appraiser. She's wonderful to start the photo department and have a breakout sale. And so I was working with her as her administrator, and Lorraine really took me under her wing and really started to teach me about photographs. Like, how do you hold a photograph? Things that sound so silly, but how do you properly hold a photograph? How do you identify a photograph? How do you write about condition? And so I started working with Lorraine and then continued. Lorraine left and she continues to be a fabulous appraiser. She works on on huge archives all over the country. And so I just stayed and I continued to work and learn how to catalog and build sales. Heritage moved me to New York, where I eventually became the director of photography. And really, as the director of photography at Heritage at that time was really you are the department in many ways. You, of course, have a wonderful operations team and catalogers, but you're sort of bringing in the consignments, cataloging, putting everything together. And it was just such an incredible experience. And again, I felt really fortunate at that time because there were so many people who were so generous in the field who, as I was learning, really helped me out along the way and gave me a lot of guidance and insight. And then from there, Phillips Auction House asked me to join their team. And so a completely different type of business and their photo team, working with multiple specialists. So instead of sort of being sort of as your own department, all of a sudden I was working with, six, seven wonderful specialists. And so I was working with Philip, and then I moved to London where I led the photographs department in London for the last 4 years. And at the very end of 2024, after almost 10 years, I've left. 17 years in auctions has been just an incredible experience. I feel very, very fortunate to work in the field, but I decided to take a little pause. And so that kind of brings you with my background and experience with photos.
That's amazing. So talk to me a little bit about the auction market for in relationship to contemporary photographers and photographs. Like, I guess I've got so many questions about it. Like, when should an artist get involved? Should they ever get involved? What should they be worried about? What should be, how can we make it work for us? I guess because I've heard some of the horror stories, and I'm just curious, like, what your thoughts are a little bit on, you know, the market for contemporary photography and like how can we make it work? Big
Yes.
questions.
Yes, I love all these questions. They're very good questions, ones that come up all the time, and there's not like one real answer to it. So I'll give sort of my insight and opinion to it. Because auction is what I know, my vantage point really comes at this towards the secondary market. And that's what I'm really speaking to. And so with the secondary market, and you're talking about public auctions, that they're exactly that, they're public. So when you take in a photograph or any work of art and you estimate it, you put it up for sale, the result of that sale, wherever it sells for, or if it for any reason does not sell, is part of public record. And it lives in things like art databases such as ArtNet, and it sort of lives out there in the ether. And so there really is a responsibility, I think, for auction houses, and something I know we try really, really hard to do is to make sure that we are pricing artwork appropriately for what it is. And I won't get too nuanced, but all the good things that we love in the photo field, like print date, paper type, size, all of that, condition, provenance, they all inform what that estimate is, and making sure that's appropriate so that it's successful at auction and has a strong sold for record, so that it looks, not just looks, that it's really representing a stronger secondary market for an artist. Now, the risk is sometimes artists want to sort of jump in, contemporary artists, like let's just go to auction. Let's just put something in at auction. You need to make sure it's being protected. And by that, I mean, let's kind of back up. Let's say you're an artist who has an edition of five and you work with a gallery and you have sold three of your five photographs, three editions out of five at the gallery, but you really want to put one at auction. Our feedback is generally going to be, hey, let's hang on, let's hold off, and let's wait until your five are sold out and maybe you have an artist proof left. We want to make sure it's completely sold out, that the demand has been met on the primary market, so that when you're going to the secondary market, coming to auction, one, you're not competing with the gallery, and two, the demand is cemented there, because now if people want the last print of that edition, they're really going to have to bid for it. There's no choice or option elsewhere. And so the secondary market operates differently in that effect. And for us, it's tempting because there's so much really strong, smart work being made right now that we love, but sometimes it's just not the right time. And it wouldn't benefit the artist, their work, their representation to rush anything into the secondary market, which is why, generally speaking, we normally would give, or I would give the feedback to give it a little more time, focus on the primary market first before rushing into auction. Now, I'm going to make, if it's okay, can I make a little caveat?
Please.
What I would say is that there's some exceptions every once in a while where you'll see a contemporary artist go into an auction and it really has to meet all the criteria I spoke about. It's completely sold out, meaning it's the last of in that edition. We know there are collectors looking for it, and also that we're presenting it and giving it the right sort of exposure to make sure that it's successful at auction. So you want to giving support when you do decide to present a contemporary artist to make sure it really cements a first auction record that's strong.
I think that really helps clarify, yeah, when to even consider it is basically once, like you said, the primary market is finished and you've got your artist proof. Um, will people, and then I guess there's collections also, like someone will bring their like collection to you. So it's not, it's already in the secondary market at that point because the gallery, they bought, prints 2 out of 5, let's say, and they're moving or retiring and they want to liquidate. And for whatever reasons, they're not, you know, donating it to a museum, for example, right? Like that's another situation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the question is, when people are deaccessioning, so to speak, or are ready to downsize their collection, they've kind of, I'd say with their collecting history, they're sort of ready to let others have, a chance to bring those artworks into their home. You're saying if there's a work within that collection that's not fully sold out?
Yeah. Like
There's sort Oh, go ahead.
No, but I mean, like, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because it was like it was in the collection of, X, Y, and Z collection. And it's now back available, and it's print number two coming from, the estate of.
Absolutely. This is a great example of provenance. And when you're offering a selection of works where it's not just one standalone work, so let's say it's 20 works or 30 works, and it's all coming from this one collection, they're telling a story together. And you're going to have that clear provenance listed. And so I do think that is a completely different context and into why that'd be sold. I completely agree.
Okay. That's really helpful. It kind of just like gave me some like just a good understanding of it. So talk to me about the auction experience. Is it still like the old school where you've got the paddle and people are dialing in and whispering to each other? And
Yes.
I haven't been in an auction in a long time.
Oh, well, I mean, the great thing is now you can watch so many of them online. So you can just tune in, if you know that the auction, just watch the sale room. And they'll normally show the auctioneer and the phone banks. So I would say is, every auction is a little different. It depends on the material that's being sold. But I can speak to, specifically photographs, for example, that I think most auction houses really try to capture as many collectors as possible and clients. And so you want to cater to their comfort level. So having people in the room with paddles is still very much a thing. That auction experience never stops being exciting. There's really sort of a thrill to it. And I definitely recommend for those. Some people love it. They love sitting in the room and raising the paddle. For other people, it's way too nerve-wracking. Other people love being on the phone. So you'll see specialists from the department and other colleagues on the phone banks with collectors, calling all over the world to, be a representative for whoever that is. And they're like, do you want to bid one more? And that's really exciting too. And even then on the phone bank, you are kind of, all talking to each other, making sure everything is going smoothly. But now with technology, there's so much pre-bidding when an auction goes live. So many people can just go online, leave their bids. They don't have to worry about anything. And, they'll get reminders, but they've sort of set their bids and they can leave them. Or they're in a meeting, maybe they don't have to be totally focused on the meeting. And so they may just be bidding in real time and they're just hitting that bid now button, and doing that instead. So I would say that auctions today really have the best of both worlds, and it can really be accommodating to what's best for everyone's busy schedules.
Yeah, I've gotten sucked into it a couple of times. There was like, do you know the Garrison Art Center?
Yes.
So they have a benefit and they bring an auctioneer up, and I can't remember his name, but I've seen him in Chelsea a bunch of times. He's got a great little curly mustache. Um, but you get hooked on the energy because they're passing around the cocktails, and then they're like, hey, this is for a good cause, and do I hear 100 and there's 150 and like 200, and he just the energy just starts percolating. And I guess I'm really like susceptible to it because it's like, oh, I want to do this too.
Yes. Well, that's really speaking to what I think is so special about auctions, and obviously why I stayed working in auctions for so long, because I love it. I think you'd have to. And there really is a science to getting that energy up and making people feel positive so that there's sort of this nice rhythm to bidding. So I'm not an auctioneer, but there are so many exceptional auctioneers out there, and a really great auctioneer can make a room just feel electric, kind of what you're saying. They can just make the sort of energy of the room and engage with people almost on a personal level when they're looking out to them. There's really truly an art to it. So that's a component. And then I would actually say is when you're putting together auctions, so many people might not always realize, and sort of how it works is that we do always try to think about really strong works at the very beginning of a sale. So works that 100% or 99.9% are very likely to sell, and to sell well, because there is a mentality that you want when you open that first slot of an auction. You want there to be bidding and selling so that it starts that sort of positive rhythm in the room. And that is for all specialists putting together a sale and what the sequence is, a lot of them are thinking about that nice move, like how are we going to sell this sale? Like, are we going to keep a nice rhythm throughout? And that is an important component.
I had not thought about that, but it makes sense, right? Like you want to get people hooked, but you also don't want to have all of the stuff that's going to sell that you know is going to sell right at the beginning because you've got to populate some of the other items in there that might be a little bit more challenging or a little bit lower on the price point
Mm.
to get those also moved. So you've got to build out this like specific sequence based on the work for that auction.
Yes. And to your point, I think in every auction you try. Obviously, a lot of it is just what material is available, what collectors are ready to part with certain works at certain times. But you want to try to really have a little something for everyone is the goal. And you never want to be too heavily weighted in like one genre or one artist. There's some exceptions here and there. And so with that, sometimes you'll take what is we all know in the photo world is really important material, but it can be a bit more niche. Maybe it's not as in vogue, but it's important. And we believe, I keep saying we, but like, in auctions, we believe that taking that material in is important to really the genre of collecting photography. But it might mean that there's maybe only two really serious collectors out there who are really going to go for it, unlike some artists that are much more approachable for a lot of people, especially who are new maybe to collecting photography, or it just has a wider reach when you think about a beautiful Ansel Adams print or a Cartier-Bresson, those speak to a very large kind of group of collectors.
And where would you have been? Would you have been on the floor making calls to clients when you were still at the auction house?
Yeah, well, when I first started, and this was sort of kind of taking back a little way from photography, when I started at Heritage, I just worked auctions all the time because, back when you're starting, you could get like overtime and it was exciting. So I worked comic auctions. I went to Comic-Con, I did coin auctions, fine art sales, Civil War sales, and just to understand the nature of collecting, like what the commonalities are across all fields is I think a really sort of spectacular thing to see. And then I, of course, also was on the phone bake. So normally, when it is like a photo sale, you're normally on with your collectors. But even when I started at Phillips, I started doing what they call clerking. And it's the person, if you ever see the person standing next to the auctioneer, I would be there. And you essentially have a copy of what you call the book. It's a list of all of what the auctioneer has of all the lots and all of the registered bids. And you are taking the final bid amounts. The auctioneer is doing that, but you are as well. And you're also helping look out in the audience for people that the auctioneer may be missing. So, they're looking over there taking a phone bid and you see a gentleman in the back and you're like, gentleman in the back. So you're sort of helping them as another pair of eyes and a second sort of record keeper to make sure that all of the bid amounts and the paddle numbers and everything have been recorded properly. And being a clerk is so much fun because it's not really the pressure. You don't have the pressure of the auctioneer, but you're watching the room. The vantage point is really special. And I think I did a number of the modern contemporary evening sales, but I think the auction that really stands out for me was the watch auction in New York, where they sold the Paul Newman Rolex, the Daytona Rolex, for 15 million. And to watch a packed room with everyone with their phones up and watching the bidding jump from, 1 million up to, I believe it started going up to like 10 or 12 million was a really special moment. But later on with the department for photographs, it's mostly on the phone.
Okay. You just mentioned commonality with collections, even collectors, even across the medium. What are some
Mm.
things that you've noticed?
Across all genres and sort of
Yeah.
collecting fields.
Or the ones
I,
that at least relate back to the photography collector.
mm, what you see is typically people are never just collecting one thing. I think that's the big rule. So a collector may have a primary passion and they're going really deep in that one passion, but the odds are that they are collecting other things as well. So a photo collector might also be collecting cars and watches and pins. And so you find that there is sort of this general kind of characteristic of a real like collector where they just kind of almost can't stop. You know, they are very passionate about what they're collecting. It's a wonderful problem to have, I think, but they're so passionate about what they're collecting. It's generally not completely isolated. Um, However, I will say in photography, looking at the collections that I've seen, I've been really interested in how some collectors really have a vision or a theme. Other collectors really, you can tell there's sort of a general aesthetic. There maybe not be like a common thread, but there's sort of a general aesthetic. And then some collectors who really wanted to collect the history of the medium. And it's everything from, you know, gorgeous 19th century to contemporary. And I find like what kind of drives those collectors to focus in those areas to be always a really fascinating thing to learn.
I had a collector once that only wanted to buy the third print in the edition. Like it always had to be number 3. Like even if the other
Very
one,
specific.
yeah. Like, all right, you can have that one. Same
Yes,
price as number 1. And
absolutely.
yeah. One of other guests had said something that I thought was interesting, that there's 2 general categories of collectors. There's the collector that buys work to put it on their wall. And then there's the type of collector that buys work to like store it under their bed for like, you know, investment, safekeeping. Is that fair?
I
Is there anyone
think
I'm
just
missing?
I know, I think to some point there's some truth to that. I find most collectors that I've met do love living with their work. And I think what happens more often than not is there's not enough space. And so things end up in storage. Or what we were talking about earlier, life happens and they, you know, move to a different country, whatnot. And all of a sudden now these works that they loved and really cared about are in storage in another country. And, you know, their life has taken them elsewhere. So they're not getting to live with it, but that's more by circumstance. And I think that's what I've encountered more. I think when you're talking about the difference in collectors, the bigger difference I have seen is there are the collectors where everything sort of has its price and they'd be willing to talk about it for a price. And then I've met the collectors who are like, no, I'm holding on to this until I'm ready. And it doesn't really matter what the price is. And I find that difference to be interesting.
Wait, what do you mean they hold on? Like they're not willing to put it to auction no matter what. Like I don't
Yeah,
care.
I've met collectors that are like, I'm gonna live with it. My, you know, my wife or my kids, they'll manage this. You know, I'm not interested in talking about it. I love, or people just love living with it. Like, we love it. It's the centerpiece of our room. It's not going anywhere. You know, nothing's going anywhere. Where there are other collectors where they know good opportunities, they understand the market, they understand the market, they love the medium, they love living with it, but there's maybe just a touch more of the transactional side where like all of a sudden they see a horse to maybe go up and they're like, wow, that's a great price for a platinum corset. Ooh, you know, and great condition. And so they nab that at a good price and might be willing, you know, 2 years, like, oh, I could sell that and have a little more money then for my next acquisition I'm really passionate about. So that I find to be the separation.
Okay. Yeah, and then you start trading pictures. It sounds like a fun problem to have.
A very fun problem. A problem I would love to have.
Right? um, One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is that I've noticed a few of the auction houses have started opening up galleries, right? Is that because they're trying to get into the primary market, or what do you think's happening there?
I think when you mentioned galleries, these sort of, to say like spin-offs of these private sale or selling exhibitions, like selling exhibitions that are just like a gallery would have. And that's sort of what you're talking about in sort of the gallery format under the auction house umbrella. And what I would say is twofold. One, sometimes selling exhibitions, just like a gallery would have a selling exhibition, which they have for a specific artist. There's certain artists that may, for whatever reason, be in between representation, or they're interested in having their work exposed to maybe a different collector base and mailing list. And so there's certain timing where for an auction house, hosting a selling exhibition is sort of the right venture to take on with that artist. And it's not necessarily in competition with the gallery that maybe represented them or something else the artist is doing at that time. And kind of get to your point, it also allows for there to be just primary sales. So they're direct sales between the buyer and the auction house and the artist or the whoever the representative who may be working with the artist. The other part is for an auction house, when you have a primary sort of selling exhibition, those are not public records. So you can have, unlike auctions where everything that goes up, is public. When you have a private sale, like when you have a private selling exhibition, those are private results, just like at a gallery. You don't have to publish those results. So sometimes there can be a little security in that, and the fact that you can put up 20 works by one artist, maybe all 20 of them completely sell out because people are so excited to have that artist's work. Maybe only sell 15 of the 20, but 15 met the price point that the artist was looking at. And that's the sort of a win-win for everybody in terms of having that selling exhibition. And it's a way to also have some additional programming at the auction house outside of just traditional auctions. It kind of makes it sort of opens it up. And it's also normally a part of like the private sales department. So the private sales departments, which every auction house has, are working with clients, to make that sort of, as it says, private sale between the willing buyer and seller. And again, those are all private records. That's not a public auction record. And there are a lot of clients that sometimes prefer private sale. They're like, I don't want to take, maybe they don't want to take the chance on some really important work and six-figure work. And they say, listen, here's my bottom line. And we happen to know that there's another client who's been looking for one, and you can match those two together. That just makes a lot of sense for everybody. Again, making a win-win situation. So I think auction houses like having those options and platforms like the sort of gallery setting, because some clients sort of prefer that method sometimes, and they like the immediacy of it. Yes, auctions, you can buy the day of the auction and then pay your invoice and pick up, but you have to wait for that auction. So for a lot of divisions, looking for a photograph sale, you may have to wait another 6 months to wait for that sale, where with, the private sales or the selling exhibitions, they can be a little more immediate.
So I actually didn't know about the private sales like division of auction houses. So like what is their role, and like where do they step in? Are people coming to them saying, I have this one particular like Avedon, I don't want to go into auction, can you find me a buyer? Is that like a situation that would happen? Or
Yeah, it is. What I would say, because of what goes into a private sale, there's normally a price point threshold where it needs to be above a certain amount to make sense for the auction house to broker. So you're not going to see it as much in photographs. That's not to say it doesn't happen, but you're not going to see it as much in photographs as you may see it in, your impressionist, your modern contemporary, and your other divisions where you're talking about different price points. But it really is good to know what clients have certain works that they're open to offers. And then when you have collectors who are like, they've just moved, they have this new place, or they're, ready to switch out one of their paintings and they've been looking for something, and they have a specific artist, that's where the auction house talks with all their colleagues and they say, oh, actually, we do have something similar. Let's see if we can make this work. And the private sales team is going to broker that and manage that transaction.
interesting.
Yes. No, I would say, so I talk about private sales, but as again, someone so in love with the auction, the way that the auction format is, I find that giving a really special photograph, putting it up at auction, gives it that worldwide international exposure, which you don't get from a private sale. So you're able to really celebrate a fantastic work. We sold the Beatles portfolio, the dye transfers in London a few years ago, and it was just gorgeous. It's the Avedon Beatles dye transfer that they made into a poster, but it was a set of 4. It was just it was just gorgeous. The prints were beautiful. They had been really well cared. Dye transfers are very stable, but they were really well cared for. And that's an opportunity where instead of trying to find a private sale, because the price point would have made sense, but it was actually a moment to put it up in auction in London with all of the cataloging, driving home all the importance, getting to promote it, having everyone walk around, and see it in the galleries and having its moment at auction. And that's where I think the auction format really wins, is being able to celebrate works on a really public international level. So there's pros and cons to both. But a lot of people, especially if you're a collector with a great thing, you think, oh, I just wanted to go private sale with my special magic number that I've come up for this work. And all I would say is there's pros and cons to both.
Can you remind me about dye transfer printing? Because this was like an early, better color output rather than doing like a silver-based negative print, because the at that time the color was not as great. Is that why they were doing dye transfer?
Yeah. Yes, and I will make a disclaimer here. I am not as much of a technical expert. So there are so many people in our field who are so fantastic and give you this like really exceptional history into the dye transfer print. But what I can say, it's printed in layers. So you have the three color layers that are put down individually. So it creates for a really stable image. So you have, your cyan, magenta, and yellow.
Okay. Yeah, I think that that was the reason why, is that it was an issue that the I'd have to check with my like professor to see if I was right about this, but yeah, that the archival aspect of it, of the early color papers, was not good. Um, but I gotta check. Did you see the Avedon show at Gagosian?
I did. And actually, I saw the interview you did with Michael Hewlett where you mentioned the Avedon show because I couldn't believe you were in the gallery when Paul McCartney was in the gallery. Is that true?
Yes. Yeah,
Wow.
it was such a nice experience, and it's the second time that I'd run into him. So it was pretty funny to like go up and just say like, "Hey, remember me?" Of course you don't, but that's all right.
That's a real experience. And I'm curious, what did you, and for those who may not be aware, Gagosian did a big show for Avedon's 100, what would have been his 100th birthday. This is now a year, 2 years ago. And it had prints, but they had been curated where a bunch of either people who had been subjects of Avedon's or other famous artists or people in our, that are, world leaders like Hillary Clinton, for example, or Sally Mann is an artist, all selected a photograph and gave a statement as to why they selected it. And I'm curious, Stephen, what did you find? What did you think about the show? What was your impression of it?
Oh, I went back, I think, 3 times. I was so in love with the design of it, the scale of it, the uh the range of work. There was like a series I think that he had done in color for like Italian Vogue on like the left wall when you first walked in, that I had never seen before. Seen the prints of like, the beekeeper, and the gorgeous American West work, which has just, to this date, I think has never been replicated. It just, you can't, it's just um and then that massive mural that they did of Worrell, from the factory.
Yes,
I what was the size of that thing? Like 8 by 80 feet or something. I mean, it was just, it's like the
it was
three,
massive.
like, it was massive. Um, and just also like building, because of the fact that he had the images from the American West and the miners and everything, then they put that in that cube with the totally blacked out cube instead of having all the white walls. It was really nice contrast and break um, to see the work. And the one other funny thing is that Seinfeld also came in at the same time with Paul McCartney.
Oh.
And I don't know if Jerry and Paul were there together. I saw them interacting a little bit, but it wasn't clear if they had like come in as friends or if it was just, a brief moment where like two massive stars showed up at the gallery. Um, and yeah, it was those two experiences plus the work, the scope of it. And did that go to the Met afterwards?
that the Met had the Avedon mural show, and now I may be putting that out of order. So I know that I think the mural went to the Met, but I don't know where the rest of the Avedon show went. If it went to Paris next,
Yeah,
I'm not positive.
yeah, but yeah, it was a reminder of just the power of the work. Just after seeing it in textbooks and not seeing it in person for such a long time, it was really good. Um, oh, this is so good. And you were actually right now in Mexico City, right?
Yes, I am. I arrived yesterday ahead of the Zonamaco Art Fair and the other art events going around in the city. This is my first time here for the art fair.
For the art fair. So the opening parade tonight.
Yes.
Um,
I think the main fair opens here shortly, just a little bit. So I'm really excited to go. And it's a fair I've always wanted to visit. And the timing just worked out so nicely. So I'm really excited to be able to see obviously what photographs are being on or that are on view. There's the great gallery, Matte Gallery from Paris that's going to be here, I know, but I'm just excited to see new work and to see what, these different galleries from all over Mexico, but internationally have brought to be on view.
so yeah, what like when you go into an art fair like that, are you now thinking about like, potential clients that this might be a good fit for? Are you looking, are you looking to work with galleries, now that you're out of the auction house? Like how are you seeing this as a collector? Like what's the viewpoint?
Yes. Well, back up a little bit. I would say, in terms of art fairs, I assume again, most of the viewers love to attend art fairs, but in New York, if we're speaking more specifically to photographs, there's the APAD fair, which is just really, really strong in terms of just the quality of all of the dealers and galleries who are there. And then in November, there's the Perry Photo Fair, which is one of my favorite, which for anyone who's looking for a great excuse to go to Paris and loves photographs and hasn't been, or if you have been, just put it back on your calendar for this year. And so even going to those, even though again, as we've been talking about, my focus has always been on secondary market, it's really important to see what is being shown and sold at fairs, because yes, there's a lot of rare material that maybe has gone to like Howard Greenberg Gallery, and there's some gorgeous, like little print that you've never seen before, and you're going to see some beautiful vintage prints, but then you're also going to see internationally some contemporary artists that you maybe aren't familiar with, or maybe there's an artist you love, but they have a whole new series of work where it's being debuted at a fair. And it's important to be exposed to that. So I would say the primary thing is just exposure, and just, the fun part for all of us is looking at art. It's like, you may not be the new series, maybe it's not your thing, but you can kind of take away, oh, this is interesting. It's, it's going a little bit off their last series, and really kind of seeing where an artist is shaping their work and how it is. Erwin Olaf, like watching Erwin Olaf's prints come back, and, just seeing how different galleries are showing specific works and series. And so now, and even then, I would say it's important because so many collectors are going to look at that artwork to be able to have dialogue about it, to speak about it, to hear what they loved, what they've been looking at. It's important. And then now, I would say it's going to be the same thing. I'm ready just to take it all in. And then also there are collectors and artists that I know. So it's nice to have conversations about what people are looking for. Again, what might be a nice fit for someone making those kind of connections when it comes to acquiring artworks.
Sure. I'm very jealous. It's on the list of places to get to for sure. Um, so like you said, you just left the auction house after 10 years, just a couple of, or less than 2 months ago. So
Yes.
I guess you're taking a little bit of a breather, but
Yes.
what is on the docket for you for the future?
That's an excellent question. Yeah, taking a little pause because it's been 17 years straight of auction. As I said, I can't believe it's been that long, but I've loved it. I love auction. And so for me, I don't know exactly what the next chapter may be, but my number one sort of hope and wish is that I've always felt really fortunate to work in this field where you get to work, as I sort of started talking about, where you get to work with fine art every day. and you get to work with people who are really passionate about it. And whether it's your colleagues or your clients, and you learn so much from collectors. And that to me has sort of always been the dream. And so I've felt really fortunate having that experience. And I do want to keep those two components really at the core of whatever this next chapter may, evolve into, and stay close to, being with the art and being with those who are passionate about the art.
Nice. So it's in limbo at the moment. What would be like a dream client or dream project for you?
I think this is an answer probably a lot of people may give you. So if it's repetitive, I think a dream project client would be someone who has healthy funding, and is passionate and excited about building a collection with a certain vision. So sort of certain parameters, but nothing too stringent, and someone who's open to experiencing new artists and new work, and really wanting to build over the next 15 years a significant collection, that has meaning, and they're willing to be patient to buy great works. I think patience is a component. Sometimes it can be hard, but it's really important when someone wants to build a really thoughtful collection. All those great works of art do not just show up at the same time. And I think you find actually a common denominator with most really impressive collections is it's the long game. It's taking time. It's collecting, maybe slowly deaccessioning some things over time that maybe don't quite fit, and building in the things that are really important to what they hope and envision for their collection. So that being able to work with someone like that, that would be the absolute, I think, dream is to work on that.
Is there a list of those private like collectors out there somewhere? Is there like a database or mailing list that you can buy?
Yeah, well, there are definitely a lot of really smart, thoughtful collectors who are active and are building. And I do think that there's sort of this nice cycle to collecting where people sort of wade in and they really get going and they start buying, and you start watching people build their collections. And then it comes to a point where they're thinking about, where does this collection live on afterwards? And so there are always new collectors. I really enjoy meeting people on the younger side who are starting to think and build this way, and they're at a place in their life where they have the funds to really be thinking and building a collection that of that size. Um, in terms of, is there a database? I think that you'd find at most like galleries and auction houses, there's the known clientele that definitely operates in that way. And they obviously are well known, and I think most people, if they're buying photographs, are definitely being reached out and covered by sort of everyone. Everyone is sort of like, hey, did you see our new show here? Hey, did you see the auction and all these great works we have? So I think it's good to know that they're like the next great collections are currently being built as we speak.
Nice. Yeah. And what about like going corporate, like going to like UBS or Chase to like work with a collection like that?
I
Would
think
that
that
be
would be
appealing at all,
really,
or?
yeah, I think that would be really interesting as well. Again, because you're getting to work with one set collection, and gives a different sort of focus. For me, it would be enjoyable because in terms of understanding market values and the condition holding the work, all the things that sort of you would need to know about the work in the collection, but having it be sort of one collection you're working on and that you're actually living with. Where at auction, you're building a new sale every 6 months and selling it and then starting again, which, as I said, very exciting, but you're not living with it long term. You really have to soak it all up in those 6 months and then start again.
Okay, very cool. So
Thanks.
this is Rachel. This has been just fantastic. We've been chatting for almost 45 minutes,
Oh
and
my goodness.
yeah, I don't want to hold you up too much longer from the gorgeous weather in Mexico right now. I don't know if you're watching the weather, but we're about to get hit by like 3 different snowstorms.
Oh.
Um, is there anything else that we didn't cover you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, well, Steve, I'm actually curious for you because obviously, as being a well-renowned photographer, what are you most interested in right now?
collections, sales, public exhibitions. Um, I have a storage unit full of solo shows.
Mm.
Um, that, it's all work that I'm super proud of, and I like keeping that storage room empty, not full. So, finding opportunities, schools, libraries, public, semi-private, um, exhibition spaces to keep the existing bodies of work out. And, I'm chasing grant money, to fund the passing freight project, where I'm photographing the freight trains
Yes.
in the US. Um, because that just, that takes some resources. And so just, hunting down the financing for that. Um, and I think also, navigating how to get to work into larger, established public collections, you know, how to get the museums to acquire the work.
Mm.
And I have a couple of museums that both have told me that they want it. They just don't want to have to
Great.
pay for it.
Right.
And I'm very hesitant on donating work. Like, I'm willing to work with you on a money basis, but I just need you to like show me that you're willing to spend a little on this, or
Yes.
find someone that is willing to spend a little on it. Even if it's not your budget, if it's someone on your board that's going to buy it and then donate it, then I'm totally happy to work with you. But just, I'm really hesitant because they're limited edition prints. Like, they go quick, sometimes.
Yes.
So I think those are the main things right now with the fine art prints. Um, and as far as like this show, I want to take this on the road. I really would love to do this as like a roundtable conversation at the art fairs.
Yes.
Um, I told Lydia at APAD, I would really like to like host one of these live. Um,
Oh, that would be excellent.
right? I think it would be
Yeah.
great, just the panel discussion or even the one-on-one conversation just with Lydia, if we can get her to sit down for 45 minutes in the middle of her art fair.
Yes. Well, Stephen, thank you so much. I really enjoy this program that you've put together. I've enjoyed the other interviews, and I really thank you for having me here today on B&H as well.
Thank you. It's really touching. I appreciate it. It was nice that you listened to Michael's, and yeah, so thank you for being here. Have a wonderful trip and experience, and I look forward to seeing what's up for you in the next future. This future.
Thank thank you so much, Stephen.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you.